It is Thursday, the 5th of March 2026. It is roughly 1 p.m. over here. Very good afternoon, or perhaps a very good morning if you are on the other side of the ocean. Feels a bit weird today. Kinda reminded of the first time I ever went live back when the years still had a one in front of them. It's yeah, this is weird. If you are on YouTube currently, welcome to what is normally a Twitch stream. If you are on Twitch, welcome to the first duo stream. This is a test. We will see how it goes. We will see if everything works, if everything is visible, if stuff is going well. And if so, then the duo streams might become a thing that we will be doing more often. For those of you who don't know, Twitch has, as of recently, allowed dual streaming. Until now, if you were an affiliate, you were not allowed to, at the same time, stream on Twitch and on YouTube. There were some exceptions to that rule, but normally, that was just not allowed, since you make your money from Twitch. So it really is that simple. So yeah, this has recently been, that lock has recently been unlocked, and we're going to be trying that with some Europa Universalis 5, as of a few hours ago, the new patch went live, which I have been testing on my own over the course of the last few weeks. And it's been fun. And we're going to be doing that with some Austria. Let others wage war. You happy Austria, merry. That is going to be the theme of today. For those of you who don't know me, because normally you only probably know me on YouTube from the VODs that I do. I'm Tribe, hello. I'm a political scientist, and I stream because I'm currently without a job. And you will find all kinds of stuff on this particular side of YouTube, I guess, now as well. I'm also a PNG tuber, so that's just something you're gonna have to deal with. Yeah, so gonna go ahead, move into Europa Universalis 5. Let's go ahead and add everything up. The one weird thing that's gonna be a bit weird on the side of YouTube is that every once in a while there will be 90 seconds where not much happens. That's because on Twitch there is ads every 30 minutes. That's to make sure everyone can actually see them. And hello, by QView. I hope you're having a very lovely day. And good to hear you're all in the same time zone. Also, for those of you curious, I'm Dutch. If you speak to me in Dutch, I will speak back to you in Dutch. Same with English, and if you try German or French, you get a lot of confused noises. Although I do technically understand the languages. That's what 5 years of high school will do to you. At least 5 years of high school German and French will do to you. It seems that we have no sound at the moment for the game. Is, I believe, because... Yes, because the audio is currently at 10%. There we go. For those of you who don't know, Europa Universalis 5 is a game set between 1337 and 1836, where you take control of a nation throughout the early modern era and all that it entails. And you can pick any nation that existed at the start of 1336. So yeah, if there are any audio issues, if there are any technical issues, please let me know. That's what this entire stream is for. We're gonna see what goes on, if something goes wrong. And if you like what you're seeing or hearing, then this channel on YouTube is normally used for VODs. So there is a whole backlog of content ranging from Dark Souls to Disco Elysium, I believe. Currently Final Fantasy VI is being uploaded daily at 6 p.m. But as for us, the world as it exists in 1337, 1st of April 1337, isn't it wonderful? Look at all that potential. We also take a quick look at this, because I always forget what the sea zones for the Pacific Ocean are, because they're a bit funky. But as for us, our place in the sun is right here. Duke Albrecht II of Austria. We have quite a bit of content here. We have in fact 145 dynamic historical events. of which will probably trigger only one. Okay, let's go to cover Iron Man. There we go, there's the Duchy of Austria. The heartland of the Holy Roman Empire has endured the long periods of the Great Interregnum and looks to the future with grave concern. In the face of the Holy Roman Emperor Ludwig IV von Wittelsbach's advancing age, the families of von Wittelsbach, de Luxembourg, and von Habsburg once more prepare for competition over the crown. While imperial authority south of the Alps is deteriorating, German merchants scramble to secure their trade routes into Italy, as the Hanseatic League relish their dominance over the region of northern Germany. However, due to the diligent efforts of Duke Albrecht II de Wise von Habsburg and his predecessors, Austria successfully expanded and solidified its rule in Lower Austria, Styria, and Carinthia. With their position on the southeastern borders of the Holy Roman Empire secured, Austria can now look towards the grand prize the von Habsburgs are determined to reclaim: the imperial crown of the Holy Roman Empire. So yeah, I'm not gonna try and explain too much, although I might have to move some graphical stuff over. That's just part of it. I am running this in Vulkan, not DirectX 11. As for achievements, is there anything we can do? Invite an artist. The fun thing about invite an artist is it's apparently meant as a very easy achievement. It really isn't, because you always have more artists than sloth for some reason. Let's see here. Do we have anything specific to Austria? We technically have a Formatio Imperii. That's to say, once we actually become the Holy Roman Emperor. For now, though, let's have a look at. Okay, we have no reforms. It is useful, means we can just kind of vibe. Values decentralization makes sense. Traditionalist, spiritualist, aristocracy, serfdom. Yep. Makes sense, we don't have any navy. Economy, I'm just gonna move that over to automation trade. Burghers and commoners we want to move at 50. Minting will depend on... I don't think we start off at a silver mine. What else do we have? We have legitimacy of... That's actually reasonably high. But the main first goal for me as Austria is try and get the historical borders going. Kind of like to play with sort of like relatively historical borders. So that means Upper Austria, Lower Austria, Carinola, and parts of Croatia. Oh no, wait, hang on. No, Carinola is the main port. That will make Trieste over here, I believe, the main port. We have Carinthia, and then bits and bobs of Tyrol and Trento. Not sure how far into... No! Oh yeah, and Salzburg. Yeah, we have Upper... Yeah, okay, hang on. We have Upper Austria, Styria, Lower Austria, Salzburg. We're kind of going to try and get the historical borders going, and everything else is just whatever we feel like. It's not going to be too much of a serious game. It's partially a test, if anything. The one said, yeah, once Kingdom of Hungary as a rival for now. Can add government reforms. The big question is, because we are in the Holy Roman Empire, that we don't want to do too much warring immediately. Step one probably is gonna be get a... We might want to turn Salzburg into a vassal. That way we can integrate them later without the problems that come with conquering in the Holy Roman Empire. Although I do want to first deal with the small holes in our territory. That seems to be the best first step, is get all of these small holes like Weidhofen an der Ybbs and Sankt Pölten all ready to go. And then Chile, and we move then... First get all of this this section over here, and then we move west, my apologies. Kingdom of Hungary, I believe at some point we will get something for that, but I can't check that right now. There is a website that allows me to see the historical events, but Foreign are not currently not being integrated. Oh dear. That's a lot of stuff we are currently not integrating. Let's just start with crown reforms. Now I know as Austria we will be getting a technology that allows us to get more control going over the mountains. Might want to get feudal nobility. Like I said, we kind of might want to turn Salzburg into a vassal for now. Partially in order to avoid the negative modifiers that come from ruling the Holy Roman Empire without, well, also conquering stuff. First things first, let's first take a look at our traditions. Now, as Austria, we get a few of them. Country, there we go. Okay, yeah, House of Glory gives us monthly prestige. Legacy of Rudolph I gives us morale, seemingly moving towards an army style. That's the one we want early, which is the land of mountains and rivers. In fact, the moment that the game ticks over into the next age, we want to move into lands of mountains and rivers immediately, due to the proximity impact. What else do we have? A diplomatic reputation. There we go. Let others wage war. You have Austria marry. For what Mars gives to others, Venus gives to you kingdoms. We have the diplomatic expertise. It really does feel as if they want you to go for both a military game for to help the empire itself, but also internally go for a diplomatic game, which is always an interesting conundrum. Okay, Edict of Restitution, which gives us pop conversion, makes sense. We want to stay Catholic as Austria. Diplomatic capacity, cabinet seats, army reinforcement. What else do we have? Discipline and pop migration, and then okay, there we go. Kind of want to say, what else do we get? Education of heirs, that's not that useful. State industrialization is useful. 10% production efficiency is always one nice. It's a lot of stuff you get in the final age. Cultural tradition and influence, multicultural empire for cultural capacity, and artillery power and build costs. Cool. I did, however, see also some other things, including the Elefantenbund. Right. I have never heard of the Elefantenbund before. That is interesting. Die Grenzhussar und die Grenzerinfanterie. Okay, so that's some additional infantry stuff. The Elefantenbund. That's the kind of thing I would normally just wiki and see what's going on. Okay, precious metal distribution. I assume it means we have either gold or silver. Let's first go for the advances, because there's only one we can pick. And then I want to... Part of me says classical scholasticism first, because we are very close to Italy, which is where, at a minimum, one institution will spawn. In fact, we're very close to what is a guaranteed spawning spot for the Renaissance. At the same time, max literacy for burghers is going to be useful as sort of like a long-term project, combined with the cost of purchasing food, which will be useful as... If you know your history, there is something is going to happen soon to the world, but I think I'll grab classical scholasticism first. Okay, let's have a look at our RGOs. What do we have? Lead, stone. There is some silver in... Where is this? Bluno. That's in Tyrol. Can be a bit difficult to figure out what exactly our RGOs are. Freiburg. I don't think we have any silver or... No, wait, no. Never mind, that's in copper. Oh, I mean, that's not in Austria. Oh, never mind, we do have a silver mine. My bad. Okay. That changes the equation a bit. That changes the equation quite a lot, actually. First things first, control, which is all... I think until we get... What's it called again? Until we get Land of Mountains and Rivers, we might want to stick with conquering in our immediate territory. And then once we have Land of Mountains and Rivers, we can move downward, because the Alps will no longer be as big of a problem. So we're looking at, I want to say a time frame of like the 1370s, give or take. Like first grab Freising and Passau and then move down. And hopefully by the time we will be the Emperor. Although it could also be, that's also an interesting idea. Could be useful to keep Bohemia Emperor until the 1400s, then let it slip as Bohemia moves into the Hussite Wars. Anyway, let's first get agricultural cultivation. And I feel like diplomatic reputation will be more useful once we move into exploration. Autocracy is useful because of the crown power. Yeah, because we want to move into land, because if we ever get a port, it will be right here, which is Trieste, and like that's the only port we will have, so naval isn't as useful to us. Okay, we also have precious metal distributions. That is actually interesting, because we do have a silver mine. So export banning could be useful for the income from minting. But at the same time, a limited export is also useful. Like, if we didn't have a silver mine, I would have gone for regulated export. The trade efficiency plus 1% is useful. But I think the export ban will be more useful to us because of the income from minting. And we want to start building up our silver mine after a particular event has struck Europe. Do I want to crown him? Actually, I do. Because it gives us more crown power, which we desperately need. Let us strengthen government. And start increasing some province No, that's not province control, my bad. What we need is... integrate. Ah! I see the issue with the integration. We might want to leave them there. Like, if we want to play as a sort of like a historical Austria, then at some point we're gonna lose this. Anyway. So I might want to ignore it. And instead, for now, focus on stabilization. Because in 5 years, the first institutions will start hitting, and we're gonna need all the stability we can get to get them early. Renaissance especially we want to get early, which means that we're gonna be paying a high stability price. Go ahead and move the music up once again. It's also... move the interface down a bit. There we go, now we have the music. Music associated with Austria. Okay, cost of court, which will still better. Like the majority of countries start with legitimacy of 75, so we're already in a better position than we otherwise would be. Clergy I want to keep at 0. I mean, we can't tax them anyway, we're Catholic. So there's not much to tax there. Ability we do want to tax, and I think I will wait with building anything until later down the line. For the simple reason that it definitely feels easier that way. Like wait until later, then let's have a look. There we go. Bunch of markets are being. Oh, hang on. That's speaking of which, what markets are we in? Nisha Nuremberg. Okay, we have no markets of our own for now. Maybe later, but it definitely feels as if starting our own market is very useful economically, but at the same time, Venice is just such a strong market to be in at this point in the game. I might want to stay in there for now. Let's go ahead and get... Towers will be on Bagdaras. Upper Bavaria can suck it. There we go, this is what I needed to make. There's apparently a bug in the game that sort of like takes a while for the minting, for the balance to reset itself. Okay, now that we have a balance change, I'll wait one more tick until June. I'll go ahead and move some stuff around here. That way I can see if there is an error in coding overload. Okay, let's see here. That is expanding mines, makes sense. It feels weird, like normally I'm so used to playing with a market which gives you so much money early on. Local crown power. Oh, okay, there we go, that explains it. The crown power is now above 25%. Surgery for the recruitment is, I mean, yes. How are we doing rivers wise? Downstream. Yeah, Donau is gonna be quite a big. Let's see here. Good lord, I always forget how massive the Donau is, like as a river. Okay. Dear lord. Yeah, they did indeed fix this. Anyway. Step 1 could either be getting some bridges up and running, or immediately moving into what sawmills. Hang on, what do you need? You need sturdy grains, fish. We don't have fish. Gold, saffron, sugar, fine. Yeah, there's a lot that we need. Bridges do feel useful to grab early. Like, mostly because of the movement cost and the proximity speed, which is useful early on. Like I said, once we grab a particular technology, we will start going downwards. I want to get another bridge. Yeah, why am I actually doing it like this? I have a thing. Yeah, this feels like a solid first. We can grab bridges everywhere, actually. Let's just start off with bridges. Work away from there. Go, that is the 100 Years War. France and England will be at each other's throats for a while, giving me time to go ahead and prepare. At some point France will look our way, but until then. Speaking of which... Oh yeah, I believe Austria gets like... What is it again? Austria gets like a thing. Prestige. See here, great power score. Dynastic power? Seriously? Small nation. Dominant nation in the empire. Oh dear, that is not great. That I'm seeing now that something is unlisted. That is explaining some stuff. That would actually make sense. I think, to be honest, my entire channel is unlisted given the fact that there's a lot of certain language involved. That is weird, though. Thanks for the like, buddy. I am very much seeing that. Anyway, as for Twitch, over here, that is all working fine. Good to hear that that's all working. Like, if there are problems, then today is the day to solve that. Close to legitimacy. It's gonna take us another, what is it, 5 years in order to fix that particular problem now. Hang on, nobility. Oh, hang on. Upper Duchy declared war on us for Waldstarter. Following through on threat. Oh! Oh, how funky. Okay. Got quite a few levies. I think, given the fact that they are the Emperor, that they get more, but let me check. No standing army. Yeah, it's not the standing army I need to know about. Okay, let's see here. Oh, we can... This is Belluno. Very useful. There we go. Okay, let's see here. We are talking about 750. Upper Bavaria, does Upper Bavaria have anything that we might want early on? We are technically in the southern Germany region, makes sense given the time frame. They do have some stuff in Tyrol and Trento. I'm so happy that they've changed this map mode, that you can actually see the countries that you are at war with, because that makes it so much easier to read. Like, that makes it so much easier to read if you want stuff within your territory or your desired territory. Like right here, I can see that there is some stuff that I might want in Carniola, because we simply don't have any territory in Salzburg yet, so it's not as useful. Okay, they are getting some first wins because all of my troops are still slowly arriving. Now, the one problem that fighting in the mountains has is that for half the year we cannot go anywhere. Okay, peasants are revolting. Like, if you want to know how early in the game we are with this war, the governments haven't even started to like our agricultural cultivation and autocracy haven't even begun yet to be activated. Go, thank you. I'm just letting them work their way through there. We are gonna be focusing on right here. Guelphs. Oh yeah, right. The Guelphs and Ghibellines has started, which would be the precursor to the Shadow Empire, which was a conflict in Italy regarding the usage of, or whether or not the imperial emperor should be accepted or not. So it was sort of like it's. I call it the precursor to the Shadow Kingdom, because the Shadow Kingdom was the period in which Italy was technically part of the Holy Roman Empire, but also was already out for all intents and purposes. Oh, interesting. They at the very least tell us why events are now being fired. That's both really cool and oh dear. Abandoned their families, not forging a battle rival Valencia. Eastern Upper Swabia is starving. Well, that's a problem. What isn't a problem is taking control of Aquila. Like, I might wanna... The problem is if we're gonna grab Bystrica, we might as well grab all of them. Because one of the things that you that makes it more difficult is a modifier known as fragmentation. That being that if essentially if your peace deal keeps the sort of like fragments a country too much, then you will get like a -30 on a war score. Thank you. Okay, so let's take another look at regions. My apologies, not regions, areas. Because technically these two... is all that we technically need. There you go, thank you. The other reason is that we don't want to piss off anyone too much. So let's also go for some money. Thank you. There we go, helped someone with another game that I'm currently playing. There we go, that is location conquered. Because like I said, the entire idea here is that we're trying to get as close to the historical borders as possible. So we've now pretty much gotten all that we want from Carnolia, or at least from this particular run, or at least from this particular war. The other reason is that the more you conquer, the more difficult it becomes to be the Holy Roman Empire, Holy Roman Emperor. Even if Austria, I believe, does get like a massive boost to becoming the Emperor. Like, I distinctly remember that that's like a big thing. Due to otherwise AI Austria never becoming emperor, which is an issue. Okay, organized relation, thank you. Precious metal distribution is almost done. Autocracy and agriculture are moving in as well. Okay, there we go. Okay, now making 10. Move you down to 2. After classical scholasticism, because that will be done in 1340, which gives us, I believe the rule of thumb is that you'll get like 3 tradition technologies just as a freebie before the first age transition. Like, I do want to move over, at some point, I want to get Master Masons and clearing terrain for the silver mine. Like I said, we're sort of like bound towards getting land of mountains and rivers first. And also the mountain tall castle. Like, we're kind of almost duty bound to grab these because they are a way for German nations to get some income going. So I think we will get guilds for the max literacy, and then from there we just, because that will be done in that case. This is done by 1340. Tradition moves over in 1342. Might be able to get peasant connections out of it as well, but that's a big if. Like, that's a rather big if, and it's not an if that I necessarily want to start playing around with. So for now, the best thing we can do is just get our economy up and running. Fur, fish, fruit, fine cloth. We can actually provide a fine cloth. We don't have a tailor's guild. Interesting. That will be essentially be a freebie. Okay, here's the main question. Do we want to go to war, or do we want to wait a few years? Because we've literally just gone to war. Okay, antagonism is none. Salzburg is having some... Oh, never mind, that's the wrong one. There we go. This is what we were looking for. My bad, they were looking at Salzburg. Let me see here. That is 3, none. I mean, Aquila makes sense, so we could Yeah, we could go ahead and grab these smaller... Like I said, like first step is just get Ober dem Wienerwald all up and running, and getting just sort of like getting that done. Salzburg is gonna be useless until mountains, so we can focus on northern Austria first. Salzburg we can also hopefully try to get a marriage going. Bohemia is... the majority of people are feeling a bit spiffy. The question is who's allied with who. So, Wald Freising is allied with Chile, Passau, and Grafenau. Oh! That would work out rather nicely, actually. Freising, Basel und Berchtesgaden. Ach ja. That actually works out really nicely. That would work out really nicely, in fact. That would be a 2-for-1 deal. I mean, to be fair, it kind of depends. I mean, want to stay below 50, but that would be a 2-for-1 deal. And I am a big fan of 2-for-1 deals when it comes towards warring. Now, the obvious problem is that we are currently... Austrian recovery is currently... okay. Requested. No. Oh. Thank you. It's fabricated Castle's belly on Freiburg. Oh dear. I mean, I guess we got parliament-approved taxes. That's useful. Like, it's not quite what I wanted, but I mean, I'll take it. That's the beauty of Iron Man. Is sometimes you just kind of need to let stuff happen. Okay, so we are currently in Austrian recovery mode. Efficient mining, so be it. We can recruit regulars. Like, we could get ourselves some food. We can't. It takes at least 20 years to fully recover. It probably helps that we don't really want to do too much warring as Austria. Like, once we have sort of like our core provinces, once Salzburg is part of our domain. Then that will help a lot. Okay, what do we have here? Florence and Frarabond, food access. We could also wait until we have stabilized the country, which takes about a year. That will give us a bit more... gives us, it's not a lot more money, but it gives us some. And it also allows for some stuff to cool down. I think that would be a good idea. Get classical scholasticism. And then move downwards. Okay, so that is, let me take a look and see what is gonna happen on. Thank you. They will be done in November 1341. Oh, that is an interesting one. We could just, in that case, wait that out. Like, we can wait out the guilds. Abbey. What? Abbey is a major reform that I've not seen before. Abbeys have been centers of monastic life since the earliest Christian times. Over the centuries, they have become the main focus of religious life. Knowledge and education as well as centers of economic and social development. Well, I have some time to think about that, given that we are in the middle of an ad break. So the main question becomes, what do I want to do once the Age of the... Oh, Abbey is actually... I wasn't aware that was a thing. Why did I not see that in that case? Well, it's an interesting problem. Is why did I not see the Abbey before? Like, it could be something specific that, like, the crown estate, that we can't have it because we are a kingdom and not a theocracy. That's probably it. Is that the fact that we're not a theocracy means that we can't actually see the... Can't actually see the Abbey. It's an interesting one though, like I never really thought about... Anyway, there we go, Twitch is back. So I think we will wait until the legitimacy hits 100. That just gives us a bit more money, gives us a bit more flexibility. And once we hit guild, we will just wait 2 months. It gives us 2 months of research that's just kind of update. And then we will immediately jump downward for the proximity cost, because we are in the middle of the Alps, which famously is a place with lots and lots and lots of mountains. In the meantime, we are getting our first... The other thing as well is I kind of want to do the war before we reach the Black Death, because I kind of want to just bunker down during that time. Okay, there we go. Parliament approved claim. Anything below 1,000 is not gonna be grabbed. That's relatively pointless. And we are only interested in... Oh! 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 Oh, all of a sudden this has become more interesting. I had forgotten that Chile, I mean, it literally said it just now, but Chile... That piano is very relevant. That is a very beautifully timed piano right there. Because we could get Syria. No. Like, we don't want to grab anything over here. That's Bavaria. That's Germany. We're not looking at Germany for now. Strategy is so big. Well, good to hear, by QView. Also, welcome back. I'm currently deciding if I want to purely focus on Lower Austria. The lower meaning sort of like the same way that Lower Egypt is technically not where we would put it, because it's based on the flow of the river. Or if I want to grab some stuff in Styria, but I think Lower Austria is more useful because it's in our immediate zone of control. We can always just declare war on Chile again if we need it. Because we do want to grab this at some point, because it will be our main road down towards the only harbor that we will probably get in this game. But it's kind of gonna depend. Like, if we can grab it without pissing off our neighbors too much, then I will grab it. Otherwise, yeah, no. Don't want to kill our king. Our king is good. Okay, so we cannot go down for now because it's winter, and for obvious reasons, passes are closed during winter times. Okay, so it's impossible to move during winter time, so we'll wait until March. Let's go to Ganselia in the meantime. Might be actually, we do absolutely want to get Waldhofen and the Reeps. If only because the winter just makes it horrible to try and invade. Okay, that's the 1st of April. There we go. Come on, buddy. Before winter hits, goodbye. Visitors are gone. Thank you. Okay. So we want to grab these two, which is... Oh! Yeah, it's a lot of antagonism. But if I were to hypothetically grab these as well, then what would be... Ooh. Is this worth it? Is this worth it? Like, we're gonna be bunkering down soon, because the Black Devil soon sweep across Europe. I think it is. I think it's worth it, if only because of how close. If only because of how close we are to the 50 mark. Which is where the alliance, sort of like the alliances come into play. In the meantime, let us start integrating provinces, more specifically over here and down south. I think it's worth it because of how close it all is, but like... The main reason I want it is because now we have we have currently only one road down south. Obviously, at some point we want to change that. But it's the kind of opportunity that doesn't really happen all that often. So, it's a massive risk. But it's a risk I'm gonna be willing to take. We also need to go and start improving our relations with a couple of bigger players in the region. Including France. Once we have a diplomat. Yep, there we go, there's the first coalition. Close to being target of a coalition for... There we go. It's a small coalition, but it's still a coalition, and it's still something I want to avoid in the Holy Roman Empire. Because as you can see here, due to our high... As you can see here, due to the antagonism, it's gonna be a while. Now, to be fair, that's okay. Like, we might want to wait with the Empire until we've sort of like taken our main region. But it's still... Local legal reform. It gives us local noble power. Let's also get ourselves a library up and running. For the mostly the yeah. You will see. We will see in a moment. Anyway, that's guilds. Thank you. We're gonna wait 2 ticks. It's not worth researching right now, given that we are about to move into the next stage. There we go. And now one of the first really big important questions. The dawning of the Age of the Renaissance. Societies affected by the Pax Mongolica in the Islamic Golden Age and the Renaissance in Europe are witnessing the emergence of a new era of knowledge, art and innovation as a result of increased foreign interactions and the establishment of new institutions. All as Austria, all three of these are useful to us. First of knowledge, the just flat plus literacy is and proximity speed is genuinely really useful. The proximity speed itself is worth the rest of the administrative focus. But given the fact that we're in the Holy Roman Empire, there's something to be said about the diplomatic focus. Because creation speed, yeah, I don't really use that too much. Market attraction, we don't have a market. But stuff like diplomatic reputation and the improved relations is very useful. Same with, wasn't actually aware of this, the war score cost. I wasn't aware that was it. That's also really interesting. Like the problem here is that normally I would pick administrative because local infrastructure in and of itself is worth everything, but we're in the mountains and that changes the equation by quite a bit. As for military, I remember actually like when EU5 first was announced and they started showing off the focus, everyone was like, oh yeah, everyone will go for military. But it's the one I picked, surprisingly it's the one I picked the least. Culture levy size itself. I think diplomatic for the both the war score cost and also the diplomatic reputation is in the end just worth it. So there we go. And as I said, we have exactly one goal at the start, which is 6 technologies down towards land of mountains. And then we want to grab these two. Spirit Tall Castle and Mountain Tall Castle. And it seems that for diplomacy, it doesn't come into play until legal scrutiny. But then we want to get peasant levies. And we're at that point at 14. At that point, we should be hitting the first institutions. Stay in defense. I mean, we have mountains, we should make use of them. Okay. Wanna move our minting up. We're a small country, for now minting is a useful strategy. Especially because our income seems to be more closely related to the seasons. So this will be, I did say 1370s, but it might be the 1350s if we're 60s if we're lucky. There we go, that is the first institution, which is professional armies. Armies have existed since war was invented many thousands of years ago. However, their form has changed over the centuries, and different types of recruitment and organization have developed in different cultures and periods. In the late Middle Ages... Is the game still ass? I personally think that the new patch that came out today has absolutely helped a lot of issues. I've been, let me put it this way, before the beta came out, I was not playing it anymore, and now I've been playing it a lot more. But it all depends on what you believe is ass. Like, some things still don't fully work right, but a lot of stuff has definitely been improved. So it kind of depends on what you felt was ass. In the late Middle Ages, armies in many societies relied on levy systems. What did the patch you said change? There's actually a massive patch note change, but allow me. Haha. But allow me just real fast. First of all, biggest change is the AI aggressiveness, which is no longer insane. The other one, as you might have seen, is multiple speeds. For me, the big ones is the transfer subject peace treaty is like by far one of the biggest changes. Same with the return core location. These two should have been in the game from the start. Like, no, should have been just there, no matter what. Coin laws, complacency mechanic, and there's just a bunch of new content for the Holy Roman Empire. Including Brandenburg, which now has Turmoil in Brandenburg as a separate situation, which is not fun, given I played it. But it has stuff like, it added automation for auto-balancing, it added rally points, unit templates, balancing, unit balancing is something you can change now. Location panel buildings, music player, some loading screen stuff, and there is a bunch of bug fixing that has happened. Including, but also stuff like passive enfranchisement system, stockpiling, no CB war cost, stability cost has been drastically increased. There's been a threat system, a bunch of new rivers. It's probably best to just see the patch notes. They are very freely available to read for everyone on Paradox's own website. As the actual patch notes. Yeah, there's a lot. So this is all the stuff that has been changed over the course. So they've spent about a month in beta, constantly changing stuff. And I think that the game is definitely at a better place compared to compared to how it used to be in 1. I want to say 11 or 1.0.11. So yeah, there's just too much to really list as to what's going on. But it's the first major patch of the game. Like for what they've started to work that all in there, or all that in there. They've started to, at the very least, test their stuff before they just dump it onto the player. Because I remember when centralization and decentralization was just randomly being changed every 3 days. Yeah, one of the things for Austria that I'm very happy about is they added land of mountains and rivers. Because it was genuinely impossible to play as Austria or Switzerland. Simply due to the fact that the majority of your territory is alpine. Although I will also say, something I did notice is I've just not been playing EU4 at all since EU5 came out. Like I've been, if I don't play EU5, I'm just like playing Victoria. So what I will say is that if you are expecting just EU4 but with a different coat of paint, then this is just never gonna be the game for you. Like, I think that at this point, that's just the honest truth, is if you want EU4 but with a new fresh coat of paint, yeah, that's never gonna happen. The systems are too fundamentally different for that, but I think as its own beast, it is slowly starting to become its own thing. And to be honest, like, I look at something like Victoria 3, which needed a full year before it became genuinely good. I can definitely see that. I definitely haven't thought of that as well. That, like, it is essentially Victoria 3 in the early modern age. And I think that's a very fair criticism. Personally, I'm a fan of Victoria. Like, I've always been a fan of more economic simulators using population mechanics and stuff like that. But I can definitely see why it isn't if it isn't your style, then you will bounce off EU5 at this stage. Like, the fact of the matter is that the systems feel too fundamentally different from EU4 to ever be a full replacement of EU4. Like, I'm sort of liking EU4 and 5 with Civilization. With Civilization 6 and 7. Like, if you want... and I should mention, I'm in the camp where I absolutely despise Civilization 7, but if you, like, want sort of like the old school Civilization experience, Civilization 6 still exists. And I think, to be honest, the same is gonna happen with EU4 and 5. Like, if you just want to play a map painter and just have lots of wars and do some insane crazy shit, EU4 still exists, and I'll probably be playing EU4 as well at points where I just want to go ahead and play as France and like conquer all of Europe before 1500 or before 1600, or where I'm gonna be playing as the Mayas and just want all of America before the Europeans even arrive. Like, I'll absolutely be playing EU4 for that. But I think that, like I said, the systems of EU5 just won't ever allow for that kind of insanity. In the same way that Civilization 7's mechanics, I feel, don't really allow for the old school Civilization mindset. But, you know, I'm just one person. Do we have here Johan von Victoring documentation of our history. Oh, cool. History of the von Habsburgs in great detail, from the victories of Frederick II, the election of the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf von Habsburg, and the recent inheritance of Carinthia. I wouldn't necessarily call it an inheritance so much as, you know, guns, but I will absolutely take that. And to be honest, that's the problem that you're always gonna have the moment you introduce population, is it's gonna become more economics focused. Simply by the addition of population into the system. But I think that that's a more overarching conversation that you need to have about sort of like old school design philosophies versus sort of like what you want out of EU4. Because I do think that EU4 sort of hit a problem that here Hearts of Iron has as well. Alright, that music is going down to 40 in both cases. There we go. It is too all over the place with the volume. But I think Hearts of Iron 4 has the same problem that EU4 had in the end, which is where sort of like the main systems no longer allowed for what the game was trying to do. Also, where is Erfurt? Hang on, are we the Holy Roman Emperor? First things first, where is Erfurt? Ich weiß in meinem Deutschland nicht. It's... Oh dear, oh wait, hang on, how? Anyway, okay, up... Dear lord, okay, up north for professional... Was that professional armies? Seriously? Yes, it was! Okay. But yeah, like, I feel like EU4 sort of hit the same problem Hearts of Iron 4 currently hits, which is where the systems they're introducing is clearly designed to showcase the entire period, but where the main core mechanics just don't allow for it. Like, I think we will see with Hearts of Iron 5 either a complete return to World War II or a similar shift that EU5 has done, where it's got to be focusing less on particular mechanics and more so on trying to showcase the entire period. Anyway, what do we have here? The Guelphs and Ghibellines do not concern us. Yes, we will become the leader of the Ghibellines. Imperial coronation. Thank you. Okay, what has Austria done? What has we have? Seriously? The Golden Bull has not been enacted yet? I know that it like ticks down one with every year, but seriously? No Golden Bull? Kinda surprised by that, to be honest. Genuinely kinda surprised by the lack of Golden Bull yet, but it just means more for us. No drop. Oh, no worries. Well, as long as you had fun, dude. Hope it was still fun. And I'm assuming that by now you've hit I want to say 2.4 by now? As the cold is slowly gonna be setting in over on your end, so to speak. But yeah, hope that. I mean, to be fair, I think the way it works actually is that you always get a guaranteed one drop is always guaranteed to be of your class in all the raids, but not certain if that's true for 24-man as well. Anyway, yeah, so now that we're the Holy Roman Emperor, all of a sudden stuff changes. Let's first things first get the Golden Bull going, otherwise there's nothing we can do. And let's also try and not declare war on every single person on the planet. That is probably not gonna help. Okay, so we are part of the Ghibellines, or the... Oh no, but yeah, part of the Ghibellines. For those of you who don't know, this is essentially a fight between the surrounding the question of if Italy should stay with the Holy Roman Empire or should go its own separate ways. And the Guelphs historically won, which would lead to the Shadow Kingdom and the fact that over the course of the 15th and 16th century, the HRE would become a more German empire as they lost control over the area behind the Alps. So that is something that is always useful to keep in mind, or that's sort of like how historically all of that went. In the meantime, I'm waiting to see where. Thank you. Felix, Austria. It is considered the hardest year, but it really isn't, because you're essentially guaranteed to get it at this stage. There we go. Venetia has banking. Ooh, all of them. Really, I was expecting banking to be somewhere else, but that's actually useful for us because we are right in the middle here, sort of like near the conflagration of the two institutions. In the meantime, we're getting ourselves some saltpeter works. Yeah, paying loans. All we now need in Nuremberg is patient sugar. Anyway, scholarly treatise has been done. We have 5 more to go before we can start thinking about what to do with Salzburg. See, the Papal States is Naples, buddy. What are you doing? Okay, 15 versus 14. Okay, we are slowly catching up. Respecting the goals with sanctions while liberating the Greeks for certain duties. Sanction of the papacy. Ooh, that's an interesting thing we can do. Guels gain sanction of the papacy for 10 years. Papal States loses 75 opinion. That's an interesting thing we can do. It's not much, but it's a 5 cost modifier. Let's do that. Let's also go ahead and improve our opinion in the meantime, you know. The reason why is because it's an economic thing where the Guelphs now, I believe, have less of a tax base. We're sort of trying to entice nations to move. Monastery. I think we want the royal court first. Yeah, we want the royal court first. Okay. In that case, we are gonna go ahead and move the minting up. Because the royal court gives us a guaranteed plus 10% crown power, and early on, that is... early on, we absolutely want that. Okay. Oh, right, because we currently don't have a... Oh, because our heir is currently... That makes sense. I think one of the first things we want is the pragmatic sanction, actually. so that we don't need to worry too much about that. So yeah, get the pragmatic sanction. First get the royal court for the crown power. Then we want to move into the chancellery for the literacy and the efficiency. Kind of surprised that Renaissance hasn't been hit yet. Like, I would have assumed the Renaissance would by now have been... Well, there we go. Well, speak of the devil. The Renaissance has officially appeared in Padova. So we are all roughly away. So it was probably a good idea to get that early. What are we getting here? We gain professional armies. That's way earlier than one would normally expect. I think it's because we were maybe a potential spawn point. That's entirely possible, that we were a potential spawn point for professional armies. Speaking of which, change education. Where are you actually? Country of Ferret. Ah, interesting. Okay. So we do want to not declare war for now. Instead, we want to balance the budget. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. First things first, Royal Court plus 10% is so useful at this stage in the game. Increase the per unit, we can do that. Okay, there we go. We might get the freebie. And like I said, the other one we want to get early is the Chancellery. Especially if the Renaissance is gonna hit us early. Which I kinda hope it does, because then we get a double Chancellery. Like, it's early game, those small percentages do add up. In the meantime, let's go ahead and take a quick look at the rest of the world. Not much is happening in Castile, England. Not much is... France has taken control of some stuff. Byzantine has actually taken control of part of the Ottoman Empire. That is... Or the Ottoman Duchy. That's useful. About 10 years in, it's a good moment to take a quick look around. And the Golden Horde is currently, slowly but sadly, being taken advantage of. It's probably the best way to put it. Okay. Ooh, cool. Okay, let's have a look at the... We need 32, so we need only 8 more. Let's go with the repaid loan. Let's gain... Ooh, that's a lot of stability that we gain. That's really useful. Given that we almost have professional armies in Vienna. That's way earlier than normal, actually. Kind of worried about that, to be honest. Like, it does mean that we do still need to get Mountain Toll and River Toll, but it does mean we might want to leave peasants' armies behind and go for an early armory into men-at-arms. Is it a... I mean, it feels like it's a direct upgrade from peasant levies. Never quite done the math on that one. know is that we are almost done with integrating Upper Austria. Let's also improve with France. Bosnia is currently winning against Hungary. That was not what I expected, but oh dear. Oh dear, Hungary, that does not look good. For you mostly, but still, does not look good. Let's get the Chancellery. Thank you. Okay, there's an encoding overload, that makes sense. Rise of Valdemar in... Let's see here. An ambassador from Brandenburg has arrived at the court to request our support in a dynastic conflict. The former ruler of Brandenburg, Valdemar Askanir, has returned from a long pilgrimage to the Holy Land and now reclaims the Brandenburgian throne for himself once more. Duke Ludwig the Fünft of Wittelsbach finds little support from his subjects and has expressed his willingness to negotiate with us in exchange for our support against the pretender. Isn't he like a fake prince? Like historically? I think he is. So let's help them. Be banished from Brandenburg and the modifier Valdemar's campaign will be removed from them, and Brandenburg will vote for a small 1 year. Thank you. Integrated province has worked out, meaning we get to move into the next province, which is Lower Carinthia. Nowadays part of Slovenia. And I'm only now noticing Winston Light, thank you very much for the subscription. A bit late, apologies. It seems that I don't have the YouTube stuff set up yet for notifications. Only Twitch notifications are currently shown on stream. So that's one of the things I need to change, and I might as well go ahead and write that down immediately. See, this is the kind of thing that's very useful to put in during my time off. Likely inheritor. Yeah, sure. Okay. Okay, professional armies is almost done, but we are also getting banking because Venice has oh yeah, right, because Venice has it, and as Venice is the market capital, everyone in the market gets... Makes sense. Okay, Savoy. Yeah, sure. Speaking of which, how close are we to... $32. Also, Salzburg is at war? Who are you at war with? This could become a problem. You are at war with Bosnia. Ooh. No, wait, hang on, you're not at war with Austria, you're at war with Austria. Oh, you're at war with Bosnia, my bad, not Austria. We are Austria, I would have known if we were at war. And who is... Hang on. Oh, Hungary is... okay, never mind. I was like, what the... That makes no sense. I was already wondering what was going on there. That's still something useful to know. Diplomatic move. Like I said, we want to go ahead and try and keep everyone as happy as possible. In that case, banking might get... We might get a very early banking in that case. Ah, there we go. Black Death in... No clue. Disturbing news has come from us from city as we recently received the following report from there. Alas, a ship's entered the port, but of 1,000 sailors, hardly 10 are spared. We reach our homes, our kindred and our neighbors come from all parts to visit us. Woe to us before we cast at them the darts of death. Whilst we spoke to them, whilst they embraced us and kissed us, we scattered poison from our lips. Going back to their homes, they in turn soon infected their whole families, and who in 3 days succumbed and were buried in one common grave. Priests and doctors visited the sick, and visiting the sick returned from their duties ill, and soon were numbered with the dead. O death, cruel, bitter, impious death, which thus broke the bonds of affection and divides father and mother, brother and sister, husband and wife. Lamenting our misery, we feared to fly, yet we dared not remain. Yes, maybe the most important event after, if we ignore for a moment the Mongolians, one of the most important events in the late Middle Ages, the Black Death. Famous for essentially ending feudalism in Western Europe. As people died, and we're talking about like 50-60% of the population, it made it so that peasants could start asking for more money in order to do the same work. After all, there was less competition. Basic economic, essentially basic economics. Before we sort of were aware of, before people were aware of that. And so slowly but steadily, peasants would start asking for more and more money, which broke down the idea that you would stick into your land. After all, you know, if your lord says no, someone else might say yes. You can't exactly force someone to stay in a farm if there are so many farms that are just freely available. So it caused the sort of slow breakdown of feudalism over the course of about a century or 2 centuries or so. Whereas in Eastern Europe, we actually see the opposite reaction, where people were essentially, well, not held by gunpoint because guns didn't exist yet, but where they were told that they would have to stay on the land one way or another, where feudalism was actually became more entrenched in society. Or not necessarily feudalism, but serfdom became more entrenched as a way to keep stability going during these times of biblical crisis. So it's sort of like one of those things that is sort of, for all intents and purposes, required to be in some way. Like, you kind of can't avoid talking about it if you deal with the late Middle Ages. Okay, there we go. New outbreak. That's not... No, okay. Do we want to procure... monthly gold. Procuring remedies. Yeah, I do think I want to do that. Gonna be isolating the country soon, but we also want to get... How much is your hospital? We're close, so we're gonna go move minting up. Hopefully we can get a hospital going before it reaches us. That's sort of like my main goal, is get a hospital before everything reaches us. But first, anyway, first things first, speaking of. It is, I wouldn't necessarily say a good source to learn history, but something it can be a good starting point for history. So, say the Golden Bull, for example, as you can see, is the kind of thing that isn't really useful in itself, but it can definitely, if you've never learned of it, it can be a starting position to be like, ooh, I wonder what this Golden Bull was about, which would then lead into reading about the Holy Roman Empire, about the way the Holy Roman Empire sort of devolved into becoming a more German empire. And I will say that compared to EU4, it definitely tries to model the specific interactions more. Like, I think it's a good starting position for history in the same way that something like Civilization can be. But it does try to model history a lot more than other games do. So I think that if you sort of like want to get a global overview, get a feeling of like, okay, what countries were even existing, what technologies were being used, you know, what concepts. Like Japan, for example, has an entire civil war between the summer and the winter court that I wasn't even aware existed. So that then leads into reading about that, which leads into reading about other things. It's sort of how, in the same way, Victoria 3 doesn't necessarily model the Industrial Revolution as well as it could. It does model the processes that led to the modern age, that led to the need to constantly profit, and that led to the need to constantly move up. And hi, Gio. How are you doing on this fine evening for you? So I think it's definitely interesting, and even just reading the wikis can be really fascinating in learning about all these things. Anyway, let's go ahead and seal the Golden Bull, which means that we lock the Golden Bull law in, enable all laws for the Roman Empire, and informalizes the Electoral College voting behavior. Yes, I've long since pre-ordered the game. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've long since pre-ordered the game. I am so excited for when the Legacy Collection releases. And it also enables us to vote the Holy Roman Empire peace and forbids unjust wars against the other members, which was a thing. Like, you couldn't really declare wars on other nations in the Holy Roman Empire unless you had a casus belli. But now it's not up to us, it's up to the others to decide. Although, I think the Golden Bull is sort of weighted towards actually being sealed, because otherwise the Holy Roman Empire is essentially dead on arrival. Like, you kind of need to have it in order to start. Oh, where has it begun? Okay, hang on. Where is it? It's in... Okay, that is relatively far away, but it is nearby enough that I'm hoping that hospital... How long will it take? A year. Come on. Please, all I ask for, good sir, is that it takes a year for thine fine Black Death to arrive in our main countries. I actually went to a exhibit on paintings and artwork made during the Black Death a few years ago. It was genuinely really interesting to see and fascinating. It was really fascinating, so... Yeah, what are we going to do now? I think... Do we want to move the court into... Yes, I think we want to move the court into hiding. We do have the stability for it. Do we want to isolate the country? Yeah, I think, to be honest, it's relatively pointless to do so. See this 1.4 million? Say goodbye to it, everyone! Stuff is about to start dropping like flies. On the first it arrives in Europe. I'm very happy that as Austria we essentially have an early warning system. But it is not gonna be fun. We have no other children. That is... Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and improve opinions in a couple of places. Coalition has been disbanded. Good. That is exactly not what we wanted. It is... Oh, it's gonna be awful, because we've literally just become the golden bull. And the AI has a habit of making it impossible to... Yeah, nobody is gonna be... Well, the golden bull has been sealed. Meaning that we now have absence of land, free the traditional diet, the perpetual diet, the powers of the Holy Roman Emperor. Which is an issue because the Holy Roman figurehead is essentially available for everyone. And countries will just pick that no matter what happens. The electorate organization, all of a sudden we have so many more laws available to us as an empire. But right now the empire is in chaos where the king died. Without an heir. Well... Oh, wait, hang on! We have... Anyway, let's go to get all of this going. Whatever happens next, happens next. This is gonna be relatively painful. So who's gonna be... Everyone is currently in a deadlock. Okay, that doesn't matter as much. Speaking of which, culture-wise, could grab Slovenian. Okay, thank you. So I need to wait 10 years before we have... we can't afford. Well, that's not really my problem, is it? I mean, to be fair, we can't really become emperor anyway. So in the meantime, the Empire is, or at least the Black Death is slowly sweeping across Europe, still making problems everywhere. So the question is, who is going to be... Oh! Oh, you weren't hit! Carl, buddy, friends, your job is to stay alive. Like, your singular job in this entire universe is to stay alive. Like, I don't care what you need to do, buddy. Just make sure that you need to stay alive for 5 more years, buddy. 4 more years. 4.5 more years. Brandenburg will switch over to Bohemia once their year is up. So that should be relatively soonish. Like, you have one purpose, buddy. That purpose is simple and also very difficult. But whatever you do, stay alive. Okay, let's get the Royal Garden as well for the additional diplomats. Once again, as Austria, that's going to be very useful. Let's get promote the integration process. As of the Turks, makes sense. Black Death is almost done. We can emerge from hiding. So repeal, procure enemies, or procure. In the meantime, no, it's relatively pointless, but still. Same with Milan. Toll mine is now good. Let's in the meantime get ourselves bodily legitimacy, which we are gonna need to up. France is currently being improved. It is relatively pointless to move Hungary up, but I still want to do it just in case. You're way behind. Oh dear. Is that on your end, or is that like a thing on YouTube's end? Like, is YouTube currently out of sync, or is it... Like, if YouTube is currently out of sync, let me know. Because this is the kind of thing I'm looking for today. Think it was on your end. Okay, good to hear. But yeah, to answer your question from earlier, I think EU5 is an interesting way to learn about history. I think Paradox interactive games are, in general, interesting ways to learn. But they aren't necessarily historical. So stuff like, for example, the rise of the Turks situation is an interesting way to learn about the rise of the Ottomans. Same with the Guelphs and Ghibellines, and there is some Japanese stuff. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it will always... Like, it's still a game. And sort of like, as a player, you will inherently have a position that in reality we didn't have. Like, I've been gunning for Land of Mountains and Rivers because I know that the Alps have a control problem. But as Austria, if I was sort of like plumped into the Austria of 1349, I would not be able to go, hey guys, let's get ourselves the desire to get our proximity up, because no one would know what it is you were talking about. Like, we're sort of like inherently playing as a nation, even though that concept would not exist until the 1650s. So there will be some inherent historical weirdness. But I will definitely say that, first of all, if you're just interested in history or stuff like in more difficult strategy games, then this will be useful no matter what. Or it will be interesting no matter what. But if you're more interested in sort of like the history, what I always recommend is the wiki is a good way to sort of like learn about things. And my recommendation is always sort of like if you're interested in the early modern era, there are a lot of good sources out there. But if you're not sure yet, then like a lot of Paradox games go on sale often, and their subscription models often allow for you to sort of like try out all the subscriptions in like for a $5 for a month, which is a more useful way than just buying the game outright, to be perfectly honest. Because the majority of stuff that a lot of Paradox games have is genuinely insane. Like, we're talking about 2 or 3 to 600 euros of DLC. So, for now, my recommendation is, if you're curious, you can always just watch people play it, but otherwise, wait for a sale and then just rent the DLC for a month. Is my personal recommendation. But as for learning about history, like a lot of historical concepts, it's definitely a good way to learn about historical concept. Like, given that you are in Puerto Rico, stuff like the Holy Roman Empire might just be completely foreign to you. Same with the 100 Years' War that's currently going on between England and France. Like, or the Guelphs and Ghibellines, or even just the rise of the Ottomans. Like, if you don't live in Europe, a lot, I mean, hell, even if you do live in Europe, a lot of those concepts are completely foreign. So it can be a good introduction to learning about all of these concepts and learning about how to sort of like to more so learn about the concepts themselves and sort of like, okay, what would be a way that it could have gone. And I will always recommend, especially if you're interested in European history, Crash Course has a great series on YouTube on European history that roughly starts in around the late Middle Ages as well. And I've recommended this to an American friend as well. I recommend that you go through that Crash Course series on YouTube, and then sort of see like, okay, what is interesting? Like, what sounds interesting to me? Like, which period or which region sounds interesting? And then you can sort of like move through that more. Like, I'm currently reading a book by Eric Hobsbawm on the 19th century. It's a trilogy of books that starts in 1789 and goes until 1914, or the long 19th century. And it is teaching me a lot about, I'm currently on a chapter about the sort of like the women's rights in the late 19th century, and it's like, it's teaching me a lot, even though it is an interesting, even though I'm already interested in the era, it's still teaching me a lot of new things. I mean, to be fair, man, Australia at some point was defeated by emus, so, oh yeah, man. But like, my recommendation especially for European history is, like I said, it's maybe start off with Crash Course. I might link that to you after stream, if I remember. Hang on, let me write it down for myself. Because that goes into more detail of sort of like the general overview. Because as a European, I will obviously be like, oh yeah, you can look into the history of Germany, which is a fascinating, like, 1,000-year history. You could look into the history of the Netherlands, which is the tale of essentially playing tall in real life. You know, like, ooh, why don't you go into Poland and, like, look at how a country can completely disappear and reappear later on. The interwar years are fascinating. Like, you know, as a European, I will obviously have a bias towards trying to push you into a European historical context. So the best way I can put it, especially for Europe, is to start with a global overview of things and then see like what sounds interesting. You know, do you want to go more into the Middle Ages? Do you want to go more into the early modern era? Do you want to learn about Britain and the British Isles? Do you feel an affinity with Scandinavian history? Do you maybe want to take a look at the Italian peninsula and see what went on down there? Like, that's the best way to put it, is start with an overview, because that's just useful no matter what happens. And then see like, okay, what sounds interesting from that? Maybe you gravitate towards the interwar years. Maybe you gravitate towards the 16th century. Or to maybe the 1950s. So that's sort of the thing with history, is like, there is so much stuff, there's so many great stories in history, but you just kind of need to... Scandinavian lore, that's a good one, because I genuinely don't know much about Scandinavia. I genuinely am not. More about myths than actual history. That is an issue that I've heard about before. So yeah, but as in regards to like systems wise, I think that especially Victoria 3 does a really good job and sort of like showcasing the pressures that came with industrialization. So, like I said, it's the kind of topic that I could easily talk for hours about, because it is not only a very fascinating topic, but also because it is the kind of topic that sort of invites discussion. Like, it's the kind of topic that when you start talking about it, it very quickly invites talking about more than just that particular topic. Because, like, for example, Scandinavian history is very intertwined with the Holy Roman Empire and with the unification of Russia. It's also, to some extent, the United Kingdom due to the Danelaw that was established there. Like, this, you immediately moving to... Oh, absolutely. Mythology is a great way to learn about it. Yes. Just yes, to be honest. But at the same time, it's also... People sometimes... sort of like forget the fact that mythology isn't history. I think that there's definitely something there in regards to like... Okay. So there is definitely a lot there, and I will always just in general recommend reading up on history, not just European, but Asian history as well. Because so much of the world today is still being dictated by changes that we made in the past, like the First World War, for example. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely, and I think that mythology is just as interesting, especially in the way that countries view the world, like sort of like Viking mythology and Scandinavian mythology. So there's a lot about their thirst for conquest and exploration. So there's definitely something there. But it's like I said, the main thing you need to worry about, you need to focus on, is and avoiding assuming that mythology is history. I think if you can do that, then you are in a great position, to be honest. In the meantime, what's happening over here? Who are you being invaded by? The Kingdom of... Hello? That just popped into existence. Good lord. Serbia just randomly popped into existence. Hello, Serbia. You've gotten rather large out of nowhere. But yeah, as for what I'm currently doing, well, we are essentially waiting for the Land of Mountains and Rivers to finish up, because it gives us... which I believe is done now. There we go. Our people are highly adapted to traverse the obstacles of our country, from the high peaks and passes of our mountains to the wide rivers and our valleys, giving us proximity impact, reduction on the mountains, hills, and plateaus. Why is this important? Because that's the entire reason that we sort of like immediately focused on it. Well, if we take a look at our geography, at the topography, you can see that a lot of our topography is hills and mountains. And I probably don't need to explain why that is a problem. If you want to, I mean, I do need to explain it. That lowers our control rather massively, due to the fact that mountains are famously a place where control is lessened. So by having the technology we currently have, we now have, it will be easier for us to establish control in the south of Austria, meaning that Salzburg is next on our list of, ooh, tasty. Or at least bits of Salzburg will be next on our list of tasty. Like another game that if you're interested in sort of like just pure building, something else I might recommend is Anno. Anno 1800 especially, because I'm just a massive industrial age person. That's just that's my jam. Not necessarily for historical continuation, but more so because I think it does a nice job of sort of showing the historical progression. Like I talked about it on the Discord a bit yesterday, how I feel that Anno 117 kind of falls flat on that front. Where it feels very interchangeable as to what it is that you're actively building in new tiers, whereas in 1800 it feels very obvious as to why you are building what it is that you are building. Like it's clear why certain production chains happen after others. It's sort of the best way to put it. Okay, so please don't tell me that you have Instance of land reader, Institute land reader. What is this? Can I force land reader? Yeah, that is. I can see where you're going with that story. That is, yeah. And thus, I mean, given the fact that they weren't sure yet as to what even was in the Caribbean, I wouldn't necessarily call it a waste of time, but there's definitely things they could have done to make their life easier. And from there to... yeah, from there to Laibach, and from Laibach down... like, it's definitely interesting how... so one of the... here's actually also an interesting historical tale. This is back when the French and the French and the British first came to the at the time the Ming kingdom of the Empire of Ming, the Chinese Empire. And the thing about China is they have they had at the time a fundamentally different way of looking at the world. So Europeans very much looked at the world, well, kind of as it's shown in this game. Bunch of countries, no overarching ruler. There was no one above the country, especially in the 18th century when this story happened. So it was a lot like, you know, if Austria and Hungary wanted to go to war, there was no one that would stop them, because it's anarchy. You know, you as a country dictate your own future and no one can really determine anything else. Holy Roman Empire was a bit of a unique position early on, but by the time this story takes place, it was essentially a relic of the past for all intents and purposes, and people were just waiting for it to die. So as England and France go to China, China has a fundamentally different worldview, which is all under heaven, which is the idea that the son of heaven, that is the Chinese emperor, is in charge of the whole world, of stewarding the known world, which in this case meant Ming and its vassals, and there were places like Japan, but they were heathens that just didn't accept the position of the son of heaven. So every country was essentially subject to China for all intents and purposes. That's sort of like the quickly annotated version, which is summarizing a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of complexity involved there, but that's what you need to know. It's like Europeans came at the time, looked at the world as anarchy, as like no one is above each other and everyone fights for their own place in the sun. China looked at it as all under a singular heaven, where countries would be subject to the mandate to the son of heaven, which is China, and if the mandate of heaven was lost through natural disasters, then that would lead into a cycle of destruction and reunification. So as the English and the French enter China, the French and the English are under the impression Good lord, my Dutch is really showing. No, the English and the French were entered negotiations under the impression that they were doing it as equals, that China was just another country for them to trade with, whereas China was actually under the impression that France and England were there to subject themselves, to make themselves subject to the Chinese emperor, even if the Chinese emperor had never heard of the country before, even if like they couldn't point out France and England on a map. It was like, well, it doesn't matter because all under heaven is part of the Chinese sphere of influence. Therefore, France and England, given the fact that their ambassadors come to China, imply that they are part of the same heaven. China was then reminded of the fact that that wasn't quite how it worked, but it's actually really interesting because as a political scientist, this also partially explains the century of humiliation, or rather the question, why is it that China could not fight off the British, but Japan could? Why is it that Japan could move themselves into the modern world, but China kind of failed? And it's because of those differing philosophies. Because Europe was essentially in an arms race, and as Europe, over the course of the 19th century, became the dominant continent, sort of like became the dominant continent, their idea of international anarchism spread with them. And Japan already had a roughly similar system that Europe had, where sure there was a Chinese or there was a Japanese emperor, but for all intents and purposes, all the clans could just fight each other. So when Japan moved into the modern world, when Japan after 300 years was opened up again, they could relatively easily move into the modern world because it was simply one step up. It was no longer everyone was fighting under the Japanese emperor. It was just Japan fighting on the stage of that is the planet. That is international diplomacy. It was just one level up. Whereas China had to completely recenter itself as just one other state, which went so fundamentally against their view of the world that in the end they couldn't. And you say what ego, but in reality, the Son of Heaven was a double-edged sword, because there was the mandate of heaven. And if it turned out that China had lost the mandate of heaven, and this was often shown through rebellion and natural disasters most of all, and the flooding of the Yellow River, then sort of like the idea was, okay, China has lost the mandate of heaven, so everyone is allowed to essentially split off, and whoever in the fight for reunification comes out on top clearly must have the heaven's favor, and therefore becomes the new Son of Heaven. Which is why Chinese sort of like Chinese history is considered more cyclical in nature compared to European history. Because in the end it is a cycle. China has the mandate of heaven, it goes through a period of decline at some point. A period of decline starts, the mandate of heaven is lost, which leads to disruption and to the breaking of China, which leads to a period of after this period of instability, which leads to a warring factions period, where at some point someone will come out on top, have the favor of the Son of Heaven, or will get the mandate of heaven, and become the new China. Exactly. So it sounds really weird to Westerners, but once you move into it, it's actually it's a fundamentally different way of looking at the world. But it's also a really interesting way of looking at the world. In the end, of course, in the case of Europe, that history was determined by the fact that the Roman Empire broke down. So for a long time, there was actually a lot of conquest regarding who could call themselves the new Roman Empire, even though the Byzantines existed. But it was still this question of, okay, who was allowed to be called the new empire, the Roman Empire? Who was allowed to be calling themselves the Second Rome, which then led into France and the Holy Roman Empire, which split off into a million different states, and that also, over the course of the Middle Ages, led to the European idea of anarchism in diplomacy. Like, technically, there was the Papal States as the end-all be-all figure, but it was mostly in spiritual matters. And this is in fact a thing like regarding how much power the Papal States had spiritually versus outside of the spiritual powers, is actually part of the investiture. Was part of the investiture struggle, which was the question on if the papal states were allowed to crown an emperor and whether or not states were allowed to just determine their own bishops. And that can sound really weird to us as in the 21st century, but it was vital for it was a really big deal. Like a lot of stories, like there's a famous story of a king of the Holy Roman Emperor that had to come down to Rome and had to sit in the snow for 3 days in order to get his excommunication be lifted. Like, that is the level of power that the papal states had during that time. So it was a real honest question of like, okay, what's allowed and what isn't allowed in that regard, as sort of like the level of like the papacy versus the state. That's also interesting. I will be honest, I don't know much about Puerto Rico, to be honest. Like, I'm still learning about Central Europe at the moment. Like, I'm reading a book on the Austrian Habsburg dynasty. But like I said, like it is history in that regard is very interesting. And a lot of it is so dependent, and a lot of what of our understandings of history is so dependent on these kinds of things. And that's what makes history so interesting. It's like people often go like, well, history is a bit boring, but at the same time, without it, we wouldn't be able to explain away so many things in our modern age. Let's get some naval supply goods going. Let's see here. Let's get a market village. And a windmill. Yeah, we do need to get some food up and running. After we're done with getting the peasant levy, it's kind of dependent on if we can get professional armies, but if we don't, we will want to go back to tradition and get some technologies from there. But for example, a good way of sort of like what I'm talking about with this game and history is there is a thing here called, well, there are, in the Age of Absolutism, you get the military revolution and the scientific revolution. If you don't know about that, it's an interesting thing to learn about. But we have been going for about 2 hours, which is the rough equivalent of what I wanted to test with today. So it seems that it's all working fine. From what I can see, I will go ahead and make some changes in the future to make sure that everything works. So that is definitely, in that regard, today was very useful as a test. We're going to be streaming a lot more over the course of the coming days. All of it will be free space for those of you new to the streams. Free spaces are essentially I'll stream whatever I feel like. That's the best way to put it. Is I'll stream what I feel like until, and I need to check this. Let me see here. Until March 27th, which is when we will be starting the Mega Man Star Wars Legacy Collection. But thank you very much for joining me, Joshua. Thank you very much for joining me as well. Winston Light for the subscription, which is weird. I'm used to Twitch subscriptions being fundamentally different from YouTube. I'm gonna be seeing that we will be streaming more later. But it's a very interesting conversation, Joshua. I'm more than willing to continue this conversation over Discord or at some later point as well. Wolfok is in Christianity. Ooh, that's cool. There's actually a Polish movie that I will recommend to you in that case if you're curious about Christianity and sort of like the complicated relationship of Catholicism. I will recommend it to you in a bit. So yeah, thank you all for joining me for today. Need to be a bit quick because otherwise we will be moving into an outbreak on Twitch's end. Next stream should be Saturday, not sure yet. We will see. It will be more multi-streaming though. Thank you all for joining me. I'll see you guys on Saturday for whatever it is that I'll be streaming. Have a good day.